Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mercedes Ondik, who was recently terminated from her position in the USDA's Agricultural Research Service as part of the mass firings within the federal government. Dr. Ondik grew up in a small rural town in Wisconsin, but then went on to earn a bachelor's of science from MIT. She turned down Yale. I mean, who turns down Yale? At MIT, she pioneered an honors thesis in neuroscience and was the recipient of the Priscilla King Gray Fellowship and the Research Award for Outstanding Contributions in the area of research. She also has a PhD in biological earth and environmental sciences from the University of South Wales in Sydney, Australia, where she was a recipient of the Dean's Award and completed a thesis in the top 10% of all theses in the program. Dr. Ondik is the primary author of 2 journal publications and co-authored another 2, and has given talks all over the world, from Boston, Massachusetts, and Monterey, California, to Australia, New Zealand, and Vienna. Needless to say, Dr. Ondik is a highly accomplished scientist who was wrongfully terminated from their position simply because they were a new hire. Keep in mind that Dr. Ondik also moved her family from Australia back to the States to take this job. As you listen to the conversation, notice how Dr. Ondik is moving through the experience, taking what would be an otherwise traumatic event and transcending it so that she's actively moving along in a healing journey. And at one point, she becomes very vulnerable, and they share the sadness and the heartbreak of losing this job and the dream that they had for their future. And you'll see that I use the gravity point method just a little bit to usher them along on their healing journey. So I'm joined today by Dr. Mercedes Ondik, who, as part of the mass firings in the federal government, was terminated from their position as a research soil scientist for the United States Department of Agriculture, or the ARS, the Agricultural Research Service. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, Dr. Ondik.
Thank you for having me. So, hi everybody. I just wanted to say right off the bat that I am so grateful to be here. I'm actually cousins with Dr. Ashley Ann, and I'm just so grateful to share my story. A little bit about me: I go by Mo, so that's my nickname, and I'm here. My pronouns are she and they. I'm here to tell my story about my experience with getting fired after 3 months of service in the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
I thought that I would just start out by sharing the text that I got a few days ago from you. And it was, very short and sweet. And it was, I'm getting fired and I think it's healing me, which I think would be really not what other people would text. Like, most people would be getting fired and, like, they would be losing their minds and they would just feel really, paralyzed by it. And it's not to say you're not going through a process, but I felt like that text was really powerful. So, and that's what you led with. So tell me what it was like. Tell me about that text and what motivated you to send it, and like where you were at that moment.
So, first of all, as my godmother, you've always been my spiritual guide. And so when this happened, I have different thoughts and different people I want to reach out to. But that moment, I woke up in the morning and I didn't have the same stomach pains I had been having for a week.
Mm.
And my digestive system was working better immediately after hearing that I got fired the night before. I just had to share it with you. We've been working together in very informal way for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently you shared with me this ability to work through your content, through your Gravity Point Institute material. And I've only spent a few hours formally working through it, and I'm already using it. And so I immediately had to share with you that my stomach pain, I didn't say it exactly in that way, but that my body already felt better. It felt relief. And my body knew it before my mind, and my body always knows what's going on before my mind does. So I was just so excited and I had to share it.
Yeah. And I was so proud. Maybe maybe we start at the end, right? Like start at the end of your position, because it was on February 13th, right? So why don't you start
Yeah.
there and tell us what happened on that day?
February 13th was last Thursday. Um, some form, I don't know if it was an executive order or how it ended up going through the chain, but the USDA received word that they wouldn't be required to, at least within the Agricultural Research Service. I don't know how much further it's branched out, but within the Agricultural Research Service of the US Department of Agriculture, they were told that they needed to fire all of their probationary employees. What does that mean? And I'm still catching up and learning as we go and trying to figure out how to explain this best. But essentially, because I was newly employed, I automatically get probationary status. As a new employee, I'm on a trial period, and I that allows the my employers to critically evaluate my progress. It's a good thing. It's to ensure that the dollars that are being spent to uh, support me, to pay for me to do the work are not being wasted, and that I'm performing well, and that it's a good investment to keep me on. And uh, despite that being in place and it actually being quite a good thing that I'm on a probationary period, it was used as a reason to let go, to fire for cause all newly employed Agricultural Research Service federal employees, but also all members who had recently gotten a promotion and were going through another probationary period.
So in some ways it was kind of used as a weapon. And I think that it's
Yes.
easy for some folks who like hear it in the press or hear it in a media bite to think of probationary period as somehow, like the probation that we think about after you've been incarcerated. Like you are now being watched because you did something wrong. But in reality, a probationary period is a really normal, natural sort of business as usual period of time where an organization, especially somewhere, like where our tax dollars are going, we just want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. And that's what they used against you.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, because it came down through the system, it takes a while. So on Thursday the 13th, I got a call from my supervisor's supervisor to say, "This is coming. You will receive an email. We don't know when, that will have your termination date.
Mm.
The way that the email is worded is you will have till end of business day that day to offboard, and that will be your official termination date. And there will be no severance. And we also think there's a possibility you might not qualify for unemployment because you're being let go for cause."
Yeah.
And I did the math, and there were 25 days from Trump taking office to me being fired. And there's like a bunch of stuff in between that
Mhm.
was just like a whirlwind.
Yeah, you actually sent me a little summary of the things that happened. So I'm just going to read like an abridged version
I
like
would
of
love that.
what was kind of happening, at least in this one little regard.
Kind of
There was a bunch
to
of other stuff.
us,
Yeah, to
right?
us, happening to you, right? So day one, there was a federal hiring freeze. Right. Day two, DEI offices were dismantled and all communication related to DEI was banned. Day three, telework arrangements, which you were a part of, right? Like not working in office, were terminated and folks had to show up in person within a 50-mile radius. Day 10, so this is January 30th, federal employees were offered a deferred resignation option with 8 months of continued salary and benefits. We're going to talk about your experience with that. Day 11, folks were mandated to remove pronouns from all email signatures. Day 12, public access to government census data was restricted. And then fast forward to day 25, orders were given to fire thousands of probationary employees across various agencies. Effective immediately, no formal warning or severance offered. Like, talk about whiplash.
If you feel overwhelmed listening to what just happened, then you have a semblance of what we were going through. And we were expected to be functional, to do our
Mhm.
job in the public interest.
help us understand that that little press release, like idea that this is in the public interest is not necessarily accurate.
Um, I was looking over here because I want to read you the actual language quickly.
Mm-hmm.
My letter, my termination letter, and the termination letters of other people have the same language in them. There are very minute differences apparently across certain people's letters, but for the most part, what we've been told, and I can tell you this is 800 people in the Agricultural Research Service alone, 4,400 in forestry, unknown number of thousands of people across other agencies, including the group that protects the nuclear arsenal. Approximately 10% of all of the employees across these agencies have been fired. So this is what my termination letter says, part of it. Until the probationary period has been completed, a probationer has the burden to demonstrate why it is in the public interest for the government to finalize an appointment to the civil service for this particular individual. You have not demonstrated that your further employment at the agency would be in public interest. For this reason, the agency informs you that the agency is removing you from your position.
Ugh.
Essentially, I had the burden to prove that my work was in the public interest. In order for it to be extended, is kind of like how the first thing says. It's kind of like once your probation period is ended, and this is like more normal, like that first phrase is true, it's what we sign. Once our probation period is coming to an end, we will have had, at least in my situation, 4 quarterly reviews, and those quarterly reviews need to be positive. And if they're positive, you get approved to continue working, and your
Mm-hmm.
probationary period ends. However, here, our probationary status was used as a reason to fire us for cause, to essentially say, it's saying we are poor performers and we're being fired for poor performance, despite not having any evidence of that.
Mm-hmm. The piece about the public interest is
Mm-hmm.
kind of used against you, right? And in one of the
Yes.
essays you talked about where it's like financially that's not actually true, right? You talked about the fact that your so for example, your position, your project, which you were exclusively hired to execute, came from taxpayers' dollars. And now all that money that was gathered from taxpayer dollars will go nowhere, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
wasted because the project will not be completed. You also highlighted the fact that there's a lot of money that went into the hiring process and the training process and the recruiting process. All of that money is now wasted. So there's so much of this that is about loss that was unnecessary, right? In a very personal way, you lost your job, but the fact that they're using this public interest narrative is toxic because in fact there's a lot more loss than gain, even if we look at the logistics and the financial aspects of it, right?
Yeah.
So the toxicity of the way that it has been done is really, I think, central to the conversation because there's a way that infrastructure can be and we texted about this. There is a way that the infrastructure of the federal government could be reorganized to be more efficient without dehumanizing tens of thousands of people. We don't even know, it might be hundreds of thousands of people. And one of the things that, seemed to be like the balm or the salve was this offer for the
Mhm.
severance in the 8 months. What made you not take that? Like this little tiny period of like, hey, if you quit now, we'll still pay you for 8 months. Like what did not resonate about that for you?
What was called a deferred resignation offer, or informally known as the fork in the road offer, was given to all federal employees. We were offered, if today you want to take this offer and sign this, you can resign and we will continue paying you in full. We will continue paying all your benefits for 8 months. I mean, most people would consider that, right? You would holy crap, especially if you're not super happy with your position, or even if you've had a dream for forever. This is a perfect opportunity to try and make it work. It's a little bit of money, it's security, it's an opportunity for change. So day after day, I would receive this email reminding me of the due date to make a decision of whether or not I'm going to quit. And if this had never come through, I would just spend 3 years, if not, if you want to count everything, 10 years to get this job. There's no way in hell I'm considering quitting. And yet, it made me scared. So I thought I should consider this. This doesn't feel right. Do I want to stay when on day 10 already we had the hiring freeze? We had DEI discombobulated completely. We already were hearing word that we would need to get rid of pronouns, that there would be no allowed speech about gender, and we weren't sure what that meant. That USAID budget had been cut and personnel were being let go. So we were already afraid and concerned and aware that firings were going to be coming next.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you take this offer, this nice, cushy 8-month resignment offer where you get this big, beautiful, chunky severance package? One of the big things was the solidarity of everyone in my unit. Nobody took it. Everyone was saying you shouldn't take it. News people, attorneys general, I know the Michigan attorneys general tried to reach out to the news to make statements that it's likely a scam, to warn federal employees that there was no guarantee that we would be paid at all. Now that I remember it, actually, there are a lot of cities where, the Trump administration did rallies that never got paid. So there is a track record with this administration of not paying. I also analyzed it financially, and it didn't seem like it would benefit me financially because I would still have to pay for my Oregon rent. Like when you add up all the expenses of quitting a job, 8 months barely covers it. So it wasn't a financially good decision. The question was, do I want to stay in this toxicity? Because I know it's not good for me. And try and make this work. Is it a good decision for me to just quit and leave and separate myself from a toxic situation? And so part of me kind of came to the decision that I wasn't going to stay in it, but I wanted to finish my 2 years. I wanted to stay and fight for what I had built and gotten and achieved and started. I wanted to finish it. And so, yes, there was going to be a toxic situation, but not by the fault of my supervisors and the people I was working with on a daily basis. And we were in it together. So I decided not to take the deferment offer. And there's one last piece I want to say about this, though, and make sure I don't forget to say the salt in the wound at the end of the day is the 13th. The probationary employees were fired and informed the morning of the 14th, that none of the probationary employees qualified for the Fork in the Road program. So if we did take it for any of the reasons that I described, that idea that it could be a scam or that we could end up with nothing actually came true too.
So you didn't trust it and you were right not to trust it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you really it sounds like a combination of your own instincts, your own intuition, and then also you keep saying, like the support, the solidarity, the fact that all of you were kind of going through the same thing.
They were completely shocked, sympathetic, and horrified that they had to give me this news because both my supervisor and my direct supervisor were not under the impression that I should be fired. They were under the impression that they needed me. They worked really, really hard to find me and hire me, spent tens of thousands of dollars to find me, hire me, train me to do the work that I was doing. And when I talked to my supervisor directly after, she was gutted. She was speechless. She was saddened and really only wanted what was best for me.
One of the things that really strikes me about how you're talking about this is it wasn't good for anyone. Like
Yes.
I think that, when firings come down from above, we assume that the people who hired you had some kind of choice in choosing whether or not you were going to be the one who was expendable, right? And what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of good people that were around you that were negatively affected by your loss as well. Like they lost you. They lost all the time, the money, the energy that they had invested in you and your
Mm.
future in the organization. And due to powers that are beyond their control, they lost you too. And I think that, we think about this mass firing that's happening as something that is impacting the folks who are fired, and it absolutely
Mhm.
is. And also there are the people who are left behind that needed you and that wanted you, right? And that
Yeah.
saw the utility and the purpose of you being there. That was that was ripped away from them too. So there was no autonomy in this. There was no notice. It was a shock to everyone. It came at the last minute, and it was forced upon you in ways that, made you really completely powerless. And the most powerful thing about, I think, your experience is that it didn't take you very long to, because now we painted the whole picture, right? It was an absolute crazy, oppressive, really gross, like a disgusting unfolding of events, right? And yet, when you got your letter, you recognized that it was the potential, like a potential stimulus for healing for you. And,
Yeah.
it's a process, and you're definitely going through the roller coaster of, all the emotions that come in the aftermath. But very, very quickly, you went from a terrible, like objectively oppressive situation and have turned it into something that you are living in a state of relief and gratitude. You've said that, gratitude is like where you want to live, and it's where you're grounding yourself.
Yes.
What do you credit that to? Like, what helps you transcend this trauma? What is helping you transcend this trauma?
So I don't want to be too specific, but I kept in contact with the other person who had offered me a job last year. The fact that for whatever reason I attracted two opportunities to me instead of one last year, and I didn't ever cut off that second opportunity. I always held it in my mind with such excitement and like appreciation for it. And even though I was really sad to say no to it, the relationship was still there. I had built like a really cool connection, and now I have the opportunity potentially, like if we're able to put together an offer to join their team. Yes, I'm going to have to move for the second time in 6 months, 2,000 miles, and now I have cats. So there are crazy emotions around this too.
Yes, yes.
But having this opportunity, which keeps me safe, allows me to then feel gratitude for everything. Look at the cool stuff that we built. Look at everything I learned. Look at how excited for me my supervisor is and proud that I am able to jump to another opportunity. So, the second thing that's out of my control completely is the support that I keep mentioning of my group. They truly have wanted what is best for me throughout this whole thing. They have treated me with dignity. And I just want to point out that that does matter. It makes a huge difference. Like the way that we go about things.
Mhm.
Yes, I understand people get fired all the time. So if you're ever in the position where you have to fire somebody, just know that it matters how you treat that person when you're doing it and how you allow for them to have space to talk to you, to do whatever they need to do to offboard, because my supervisors have really truly allowed me to feel to live in gratitude, and they had a huge part in it, I think.
Yeah. So, like the theme of social connection and your relationships, really, the way that you go about nurturing and maintaining respectful relationships
Yeah.
is kind of like your safe haven, right? From, you know, deciding not to go with the job, but doing it in a way that preserved your connection and fostered a kind of communication where you could just check in with this person. Like, that's not normal. People don't do that. Like, in a lot of different ways, the job hiring and the firing process can feel very impersonal, right? It's like you're just
Mm.
a number, you're just an applicant, but you have found a way to be very human and to be very connected even when you've turned people down.
I actually drove down to a field day because they had invited me, even though didn't think like, if I got the other offer, I was ready to take it. I still wanted to go and see it and be there and meet them, and it was awesome. I loved it, and I have that experience regardless if I took the job or not.
Yeah.
And I if I get this job, let me just say, I finally will have gone from Boston to an on-farm researcher where I will be spending the summer in the field.
Oh, so
So,
what you're saying is these very strange turn of events are actually manifesting what you meant to at the beginning.
yeah.
But there was just a little bit of dissonance between what actually happened and the design that you had made for your dream, right? There was like a little dissonance that wasn't matching up. And it's interesting to hear you say, I can see that, right? Like, I can see that this, you know, really inconvenient move, again, that I have to do within 6 months, is actually what I asked for in the first place. So, like, as I'm hearing you talk, to me, there are kind of two major factors about that are like really helping you stay in this state of relief and gratitude. One, it's how you are in relationship to other people. And then two, it is your perspective and the way that you view everything that happens to you as something that happens for you. So let's break those down a little bit. Like, have you always been so open and vulnerable and found relationships easy?
No.
No, you have done major, like, trauma work around your relationships and your feelings and your boundaries that is allowing you to open up your heart to more people. Like, what are some of the tools that you are using, that's making you more open and vulnerable to engagement?
One of the things that comes to mind right away is sometimes I don't want to reach out, allowing myself to not reach out. Because I think before I would probably force myself to, and then I probably wouldn't do it again or something like that. Like,
Mm.
I don't have an exact thing in mind, but I know myself very well. And I remember being like, "Oh, I should probably call grandma," or, "Oh, I need to call my dad," or whatever, and then I would get really hurt when it wasn't reciprocated, in certain relationships, and so I stopped for a while, and that was helpful to kind of think about, why don't I want to reach out to certain people? Why don't I wanna continue? So I kind of I'm talking about my family because I think I started with my closest relationships, my family, and then once I stopped, I actually had time to think about the emotions I was having, process them, and then communicate them to those people who were very close to me.
Mhm,
And once I had done that, it was easy to talk with them again.
mhm,
And then what came next, I could expand to more people because I had done my base.
mhm.
I had and I had those people and I knew I could tell them stuff if it came up, um and sometimes you have to go back and forth, and it's not like those relationships are always shored up, right? But now I have a huge group of people. Like, I haven't started it yet, but I've reached out to maybe like 10 or 12 people for a game night, which I never would have had. I don't know, maybe the emotional capacity to do before, or whatever it happened to be that was my limiting factor that was keeping me from that. I was able to individually contact all the people, ask them if they wanted to join, create a group chat, and start it. And the first thing is going to be this Friday night with all these people, and I have this huge group of friends, and some of people are, like, very unexpected too. Somebody who used to play volleyball with me is in this group, and
Love it.
because she's been very responsive and reciprocal, she's now one of my closest contacts. out of nowhere.
I love that. You've been in many different iterations of the work, but right now in our Gravity Point program, there are really those major phases, which is what you just said, giving space and letting go of what does not feel good, right? And recognizing that those patterns of you, maybe pursuing relationships that weren't reciprocal or feeling hurt and, ignoring it, whatever it was, that creating space, that letting go process gives you the space to process what's going on, figure out what your trauma patterns are, and then you manifest a new way, which we call letting in, right? Which is this idea that once you give that space and you let go of what doesn't serve you, you automatically get more energy for how to communicate clearly, how to connect in a meaningful way, how to, engage with people in a way that feels boundaried and respectful and reciprocal
Yeah.
for you. And that's so cool that it's like manifested into an amazing community that you're building with this game night at the exact time
Mm.
where you just got fired, where a lot of folks are in a state of isolation and don't know what to do because every day they connected to their colleagues.
Because this has happened so quickly, and I'm switching teams so quickly after having just started this one, I am a bit nervous about having so many new people that I've added to that docket of people I care about. It's overwhelming because I want to make sure that they know that I care about them, even though I need to leave.
Although you are transcending this and you're finding meaning from it, there's also a lot of loss at the same time, right? Like a lot of things that are left undone and a lot of things that are left unresolved. And I imagine that's a difficult part of this as well.
When you say that, like, I don't know if I even have the words yet because I truly am just so sad. And that doesn't come through when I'm speaking about the new job opportunity that I might have. And it doesn't come through when I'm sitting in my gratitude. Although those things are beautiful and keep me grounded, I'm also very, very sad. What comes to mind when I say that is actually quite beautiful, though, because I think that what I just said is evidence that I'm healing too, because I'm not in that go, go, go mode that I get into when something happens that I need to fix it. I'm actually feeling, which I know that over the years, and this is something that I have been aware of actually, is that um, I haven't always been able to feel when I need to. But there truly is just so much loss that comes with me being fired, and as a research scientist, he was with us for 2.5 years and has also been fired. He put it very, very eloquently that we're a small research group and we're part of a team. And if you have 4 pillars and you all depend on each other and you fire one, that doesn't just hurt that person. That hurts the whole team. They don't have the expertise to fill in what that person was there to do and for. When you hurt that other pillars, how are they supposed to do the work that they were hired to do with good performance? How are they also supposed to continue in the best of public interest? Not anything that they did wrong, but the people who are supposed to protect them and the people who were elected to support the public interest have now just crippled the government's ability to support the public's interest. So, whether or not my position makes a huge difference, the fact that thousands of us are gone makes a huge difference. It makes all the difference.
You're sad about what you've left behind too.
Yes,
And
absolutely. I
heart-
am mourning.
heartbroken about all the difficulties and challenges and losses that are impacting people who are doing really good work.
I was there for a reason, and it's part of the reason why I couldn't bring myself to quit. How long had it taken my supervisor to find me with the exact expertise needed for the job?
You
And the
know,
whole purpose of my position was to make her position more efficient into the future.
I'm struck by as you're talking, there's I hear you. You're sad for everybody else. But when you were crying, you were sad for you. You're not going to be able to see the end of this project. You're not going to be able to see the end of what Oregon has for you. This whole dream that you had for yourself is gone, and it wasn't your choice.
I'm really sad.
For yourself, for Mo, and everything that they wanted to do.
Yeah. As angry as I am about all those things I was talking about, you're right. I wasn't sad. I wasn't the sadness had evolved, and when you brought it back to me and what I've lost, the sadness returned. So, you know,
And that is probably a
it's
pattern for
hard.
you, right? Like, it's easy to feel angry and sad for other people. That's easy for you. It's easy for you to figure out what to do. But right now, as relieved and grateful that you are, all are true.
Mhm.
As excited you are as finding, another way of being. At the same time, the edge of your healing right now is feeling sad for yourself, feeling sad for Mo, and how she's not getting what was planned and what was hoped for.
When you build a vision and you are able to achieve it and you are able to see that you like it as well, because we don't always like what we build, right?
Yeah, but
Um,
you really like your home.
I love my home and I love the people I'm working with. And I think this has transcended other opportunities I've built for myself too. It's only gotten better, and that's really exciting, but when you have to then again say goodbye to it and let go of something that's even better than what you've let go before, eh. Come on, man.
Process. It's a process. Yeah. You're looking for a place that you're not going to outgrow. When you are somebody like you with the method that you have now, the gravity point method, when you have that, you grow real quickly.
Yeah,
And
this has been real quick.
yes,
I'm a completely I mean, I'm not a different person, but my skill set is completely up level, like, it
yes,
since I don't even have words because I just feel so night and day about where I am now and where I was when I took this job.
yep.
And
So,
I'm already in the last month ready to move back to Wisconsin. But what does that mean for this dream that I have of having roots?
so in the gravity point method, we know that this gravity point needs to have a lot of slowness, personal space, and some kind of honoring of what was. So, like writing down a letter of all the dreams that you had and then burning it, or, writing in your journal everything that you thought you'd have. And this one requires crying, which,
Mhm.
privacy and sacred space is a really important part of that, which is totally different than a gravity point having to do with anger, right? Anger is active, doing, planning. But for sadness, slow, softness, writing down those dreams that won't happen, maybe writing a letter to your home that you're leaving. And even as I say these things, the emotion comes back up. And that's the whole point, right? Healing
Yeah.
through feeling. That seems like it was really important to touch on. How does it feel now that you kind of identified where the emotion wasn't coming up? Like,
It
right.
allowed us to find the resonance.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Like you knew something was unresolved, but you didn't really know where it was. And now you know your defense against it, right? So
Mm,
Mo feels sad, but they learned a long time ago that it's only appropriate to feel sad for others.
mm,
And so we're letting go of that and making space for your feelings about this, your dreams, your loss, and doing some kind of ceremony around that, writing, crying, saying goodbye to your home, even if it's not, a whiles away. Like it's about doing that work so that
mm.
you've got energy and space opening up for you for the next thing that's dying to come in. Kind of to wrap up, I think this experience of you being one of the thousands and thousands of folks who were fired in a really oppressive, discriminatory way, it gives a really powerful illustration of what it looks like when you know how to be human, like when you know how to take everything that happens to you and make it happen for you. Like that's what you're doing right now. And I think that the way that you've been doing that is just a testament to the work that you've done before this,
Mm,
to be able to show up, to be present, to live in relief, to live in gratitude, to have maintained your relationships and an open heart so that you have another job option right now, to maintain a high perspective and, a perspective of empowerment versus victimization so that you can see having to move back to Wisconsin as a potential real blessing for you, your husband, and your fur family. Like I think it's really amazing to watch you go through what would be a traumatic experience and really transcend it um, as you move through it. So, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable at this very tender time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here and being able to share my story, and for you to have shared your platform with me is both healing, to continue that healing process, and also um, just an honor, because I think more people, first of all, should know about it, but also um, for me to be able to share my story is not something that I've done much before. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, you should be good and tired after this.
I have my therapy session after this.
Perfect. Now
I
you
know
know what to
exactly
talk
what I need
about.
to talk about.
Yep.
Because last time I talked to her, I was just giddy. Like, I just got fired. Like, I don't know. I'm fine. It hasn't hit me yet, but I feel good. Like, I was
Yeah.
sitting in the activation energy and the relief, and it
Yeah.
hadn't come down yet into all the rest. So,
Well, I would reframe that. So what happens is that
yeah.
layers of energy go. And so like you just hit your peak first, relief and gratitude. And another person would have gotten stuck here. But like every moment of every day there's a new activation. So, you know, at that point you didn't know that you were probably going to have to move out of Oregon. You just had a
All
hunch.
right. Yeah.
So there's another layer. So you were able to feel relief and gratitude about leaving a toxic situation,
Yeah.
and now you're working on a different thing, which is actually you have to leave what feels good. You're realizing
Yeah.
that you have to leave, so it's like a different thing entirely. And the reason I'm reframing that is because I don't want you to think that your initial reaction was dissociative or dysregulated, because it wasn't.
That's so good. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I felt good. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
when is it going to hit? And that is the framing that people give.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'm waiting for it so that I can engage in that conversation, that relationship, and the empathy that of other people's emotions too.
Hmm.
But if they weren't there to talk about it and I didn't have that relationship, I wouldn't have thought that way.
Yeah. And you like it's kind of like being at a funeral. Everybody's at a different state.
Mhm.
Just because people are stuck in, and I don't know where they are, just because other people are stuck in anger, guilt, or fear does not mean that you can't empathize with them from a state of relief and gratitude, right? You
Okay.
don't need to take on their exact feeling to be empathic and supportive. You can just hold space for whatever they're going through, knowing that you can stay up here. And now, when it comes to your different situation, which is now you're leaving something that feels really good, now you're working on a different set of emotions. So, when it comes to empathy, you can stay in relief and gratitude and activation and activism, right? And then also do your private work of like, yeah, I'm really sad to leave all of you. I'm really sad to leave my apartment. Those two things are separate. And that's what the gravity point method is really good about. It's not a personality test. It's not a one and done evaluation. It's situational because our human system adapts based on the circumstances. So you are not working on being fired anymore. You might still,
Right. Yeah.
engage in whatever, but your evolution there is complete. Now you're
I'm
working
working
on,
on letting go of the project, and I'm
yes.
letting go of the relationships, and some of me is like, "Okay, hold on. You don't have to let go yet. We're still here."
Yeah. And
Um,
also you started mourning the loss, you know, a month ago. So you're the parts of you that are not related to time already see it coming. And I had to learn that. Took me a long time, but you're going to see ahead of things all the time. So mourn now so you don't have to mourn later. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Dr. Ondik. If you were moved by their story, please share this with a friend. Thousands and thousands of people have been wrongfully terminated from their jobs, and they deserve to get their stories out. And if you yourself are going through an overwhelming, traumatic time, please click the link in the description to learn more about how the Gravity Point program may help.